Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, I think there was a baseball game last night, and it ended well for the Dodgers. The Dodgers are heading back to the NLCS, the rematch against the Braves. There was a little bit of controversy at the end, which we'll discuss, but we'll also talk about a lot of decisions that Dave Roberts and the coaching staff made. Talk about Cody Bellinger coming clutch and Mookie Betts being worth all that money the Dodgers gave him. So that's what's coming up. So keep it locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. I'm Vince Samperio from Chavez Ravine Fiends. This is Locked On Dodgers. I want to real quick thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. We are available every Monday through Friday, wherever you find podcasts or on YouTube, and all for free. This is a daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. And this episode is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Download the app and join us every week to get in on the action. That's Jeff Snider of Baseball Essential. And Jeff, we have there was a baseball game last night, and a pretty good one at that. And the Dodgers are heading back to the NLCS, and all is right in the world.
Yeah, this game was not stupid. It had potential to be, but it was not stupid. And despite what Harold Reynolds thinks, it was also entertaining. So, yeah, great game, great series, great everything. I'm happy because the Dodgers are moving on.
Yeah, very happy vibes over here. Immaculate vibes, some might say. And we're going to talk about some of the decisions that went into the game. But real quick, let's just address the Dodgers. The game ended on a controversial call, a controversial check swing call, which, Dodger fans were quick to, and us as well, we're quick to bring up the Darren Ruff call that happened during the regular season. But, the fact of the matter is the way the game ended did kind of suck. Because that's what's going to be talked about, not the most, but it'll be talked about more so than the Dodgers having a really good game and Cody Bellinger coming clutch and Max Scherzer making his first career save. But yeah, it was a questionable call, and that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, it was a bad call. Wilmer Flores didn't swing, but Wilmer Flores was 1 for 11 in the series coming into that at bat, and that one hit was hit 68.5 miles an hour. And he was 0 for 17 or 18 in his career against Max Scherzer. So Wilmer Flores was going to get out. That game ended when Lamont Wade's ball went foul, and then he looked at strike three. Late night, Lamont didn't come through. There was no way Wilmer Flores was coming through against Max Scherzer. So, yeah, it sucks that it ended on a bad call, but it was going to end one way or another in that at bat anyway. The Dodgers won because they scored more runs than the Giants, and that was not going to change with Wilmer Flores in the batter's box.
Yeah, exactly. And let's just talk who was on the mound at that time. We you hosted a Spotify Green Room before the game talking about their decision to go with an opener. They ended up going 2 innings with openers with Corey Knebel, Brusdar Graterol. Julio came in, pitched 4 innings, and then it was Blake Trinan, Kenley Jansen, and Max Scherzer closed it out. His first career save, big vibes from the 2016 NLCS, which ironically the Clayton Kershaw closed out against Max Scherzer and Trey Turner's Nationals. But yeah,
did
Jeff.
Julio start that game too?
Yeah, I think no. Rich Hill started, didn't he?
Oh, Julio pitched though. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a close game, as close as you can get. When the Dodgers scored first, the Giants scored the next half inning. The Dodgers scored in the top of the 8th, and the Giants didn't score the rest of the way. So it was fun. And yeah, I mean, I guess we'll start with Max Scherzer. What were you thinking when he was coming out of the bullpen?
I said before on Twitter, I said here on the show, I didn't think that they should use Max Scherzer in the game. And, when they went to Trinan in the 7th inning and didn't do a double switch, so we knew it was a 1 inning only thing because the pitcher spot was coming at second. And then they went to Jansen in the 8th. Like, I get it, that's where if the Giants score in the 8th, there may not be a bottom of the 9th. And so you go with Jansen. So it seemed like, okay, maybe they're really considering going with Scherzer. I was still a little bit surprised because they had Joe Kelly and Phil Bickford and Alex Vesia, they had some arms left, and Scherzer even said after the game that he didn't know if he was going to come in or if they were going to go with Joe Kelly. And he said he was fine either way. He said he told Dave Roberts, I'll be ready for whatever, which, like you said, vibes of the 2016 series against the Nationals. That's kind of the same thing Kershaw did. And Kershaw actually pushed the envelope a little bit more, just went down and started warming up without Dave's permission, which was kind of vibes of Oral Hershiser in 88. And, and so Scherzer at least had permission to warm up. But Robert said Scherzer had been telling him for a couple of days, I wanted to pitch if you need me. And, he threw 13 pitches or whatever. It was in that situation, even though I had said I didn't like the idea and I would have been fine with Joe Kelly or Phil Bickford coming in, you feel good with the 1-run lead and Max Scherzer coming in, knowing he only needs to get 3 outs, regardless of everything I said before. When he started running in for the bullpen, I thought, okay, this game's over. And then he got 4 outs, like he did what he needed to do. And we were right. The game was over.
Yeah, realistically, he was going to come in, and either the game was going to end either way. I don't think it would have been a case of they tied up. I think it would have been a case of he's coming in for 1 inning regardless, and the inning could have went either way, and it went in the favor of the Dodgers, despite Justin Turner's best attempt to make it a lot more stressful than it had to be. So. Yeah, I guess let's stick to the topic of Max Scherzer, because Dave Robert did say after the game that he still plans to start him game 1 of the NLCS. This would, he threw 13 pitches. Obviously, you can debate on whether those 13 pitches are a lot different than throwing a bullpen session. But the fact of the matter is, I think it kind of still sets him up best with Max Scherzer, even if he only goes 4 or 5 innings, kind of like Walker Buehler did on short rest in game 4, and then a bullpen game, and then Walker Buehler game 2, and then Julio lined up for game 3, rather than, maybe go bullpen game 1, Walker Buehler game 2, Scherzer game 3, Julio game 4. You're pushing guys back a little bit where, Max Scherzer can give you 4 or 5 innings, even if he threw in last night's game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this year's postseason is so much different than last year's, being back to having built-in off days. And so you can afford, even if, with the Dodgers bullpen, even if Scherzer only went 4 and then the next day Buehler only went 4 or 5, the Dodgers can still handle that because they have a day off tomorrow, or today now, when you're listening to this, and then they have a day off after game 2. And so it's really, there's built-in rest days. And so basically everybody in the bullpen would be available on both Saturday and Sunday. So you can cover for plenty. And so, yeah, it seems to me like unless Scherzer comes out of the celebration just feeling awful tomorrow morning, it seems like it makes sense to have him start game 1, like you said. And then I have quite a bit of faith that Walker Buehler can go plenty deep to save the bullpen a little bit, even if Scherzer does have kind of a shorter stint.
Well, Max Scherzer might feel awful tomorrow morning, but I don't think it'll be his arm if that's the case. The Dodgers, shirtless Scherzer once again made an appearance. The Dodgers, really enjoyed. They did it during the wild card game, but it was, a little bit different. And we talked about celebrations before, but I think they're definitely going to get after it a little bit extra tonight, just because they didn't get to do it during the regular season. They did it during the wildcard game. That game ended, pretty crazy with the Taylor walk-off, but it wasn't, it was pretty fast. Like, I was out on the field that night. They came back out onto the field with their family pretty quick, but I think they're definitely going to get after it today, head to Atlanta, and, take on the Braves again, and probably make Braves fans hate the Dodgers even more than they already do.
Yeah. And, one last point about the bad call at the end of the game. If Darren Ruff had been correctly ruled to have swung by Ed Hickox earlier in the season, the Dodgers would have celebrated at Dodger Stadium tonight and would now be waiting in LA for the Braves to fly to LA. So things even out. Unfortunately, bad calls by the umpires happen to both sides. It's too bad that they happen to anybody. But in this case, I guess, what's the phrase you kids say? Ball don't lie.
Yeah. Bottom lie. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts, and the rest of the offense. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar. And if you need to know, it's a very good stress thing to have, like a stress bar to have during these Dodger games. Because, I have my stress M&Ms that if you follow me on some social media, you might know. But, M&Ms aren't the best for you. But I can have a stress Built Bar, Good for me. Give me that protein. Keeps me full because I can't really eat during the game because it gets so stressful. So Built Bar, go get them now for the rest of this postseason. They'll be your stress bars, stress Built Bars. We'll get that coin. We'll get that term coined. But yeah, they are very healthy. They all taste great. They have a bunch of different flavors. They're always mixing and matching flavors and bringing flavors in on a rotating basis. And right now you can get 15% off your order if you go to built.com and use the promo code LOCK15. That's LOCK15, promo code 15% off at built.com. Want to thank you and remind you to make Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. All right, Jeff, let's transition into the offense. They only scored 2 runs, but that's all they needed. Mookie Betts had 4 hits, the first Dodger player in history to have 4 hits in a winner-take-all postseason game. Cody Bellinger continued to come up clutch in winner-take-all games. We remember Game 7 last year. Remember, he had a big hit in Game 7 of 2018 against the Brewers, or if I'm not mistaken, or he had to walk off that series too. But either way, Cody Bellinger erasing kind of what we talked about throughout the last month of the season, erasing the terrible regular season by coming up clutch in the postseason.
Yeah, we've said it repeatedly here. There came a point by about August, it was clear that no matter what Cody did, the back of his baseball card is going to show that 2021 was a crappy year for him. And what he's done since then, he's made incremental improvements. We've seen advancement, and what we've seen, other than Game 1 of this series in the postseason, what we've seen is a Cody Bellinger who's putting the bat on the ball. He still has some strikeouts. Every major league player strikes out sometimes, but he's not. There were times this season when you thought, oh, it's an automatic out, or if they pitch him right, there's nothing he's going to be able to do. And that hasn't been the case the last week or so, other than Game 1 of this series. And what we saw there with Duvall, I was surprised that Duvall, he has such a good fastball. He never did throw Cody a fastball. He just kept going slider after slider. And I was a little bit surprised by that, just because, Cody, even though he made strides, the high fastball is still something that he struggles with. And so the fact that they never did throw him a fastball, I turned to my daughter, hashtag Lindsay Magic. And I said, when they got to 1 and 2, I think on Belly, I said, it's a high fastball coming. He's going to try to get that high fastball by him. And then he threw him another slider, and Cody ripped it up the middle, hit it hard, through the shift. And yeah, I mean, a version of Cody Bellinger who puts the bat on the ball. He has so much natural power and speed that good things can happen when Cody doesn't strike out. And overall, I'm one of those annoying new school guys who says, strikeouts aren't actually worse than other outs most of the time. But the fact is, especially for Cody Bellinger, with the power and speed combination, just putting the bat on the ball is a big deal for Cody and can pay a lot of dividends.
The other big part of that hit too was with Justin Turner on second base. He hit it in the perfect spot because it wasn't a guarantee that any base hit was going to score JT. There was only one out. He wasn't going on contact. So it had to be a perfectly placed ball, and that's exactly what he did, and that's exactly where he hit it. Justin Turner tweeted after the game that something to a Roger Dorn impression. He got on base by getting hit. He continued to struggle at the plate, did make that error at third base in the 9th inning, but all is forgiven at this point. And it's a new series, and both Turners, Trey and Justin, can reset everything and get back to it and help the Dodgers advance to the World Series. But let's talk about Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts had continually come up big in this series and so far in this postseason and so far in his Dodger career in the postseason. He's hitting well above 300 and stolen base, which came up clutch when the Dodgers scored the first run because he got to second and he wouldn't have scored unless he had stolen that base. Mookie Betts at the top of that lineup just continued to have that Mookie magic, that postseason magic, and worth all the money the Dodgers are going to pay him.
Yeah, absolutely. Mookie came up huge, and we talked after yesterday's game about the fact that the top of the order came through, not yesterday's game, but the game the other day. The fact that the top of the order came through seemed to be a good foreboding feeling, the opposite of foreboding, whatever the good version of foreboding is. And Mookie came through with 4 hits, a big stolen base, get himself into scoring position to score that first run, and it was huge. And Trey Turner didn't come through, but Mookie really did. And it reminds you that guys can really good players can go through little slumps, but they can break out of those slumps in ways that we have no idea, And so the fact is, Mookie struggled a little bit early in the series, and then ended up being the player of the series. If they did a MVP of the NLDS, it would have been Mookie Betts, and that's a big deal. Mookie had a great series, even though it didn't start off great, and hopefully that does bode well for the Braves series with the Turner brothers.
Yeah, and you never know. I mean, Mookie could have potentially had this series done even earlier if that ball that he hit, Brandon Crawford didn't jump and catch that one. He made sure to make it over Brandon Crawford's head multiple times last night. But yeah, he came through clutch, and there wasn't too much offense to talk about, but it was enough, and the Dodgers are advancing. So let's pivot a little bit, talking about Dodgers Giants. Just the series everyone wanted, as Dave Roberts said multiple times, the series that for sure MLB wanted, the series that had never happened in the postseason before, the rivalry, 107 wins, 106 wins this season, 10-9 regular season record head to head, came down to game 5, came down to a tie game heading into the 8th inning, and pretty much gave us everything we could really ask for. Although it was stressful, but if you're just a pure baseball fan, that was probably one of the better series you can remember from the last few years, especially with all the history behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. The first time they've ever met in the postseason, and it did not fail to deliver. 162 games came down to one game between them. 19 game series came down to one game between them, and then this game came down to one game, came down to one run and one inning. And it was the fact that it came down to a bad call by the umpire kind of shows you how close everything was between these two teams all year. And the Giants, I still don't understand how they did it this year, but they had the best record in the regular season. They won 107 games. Bad teams do not win 107 games. You have to be good, even though I think they got a little bit lucky and the Dodgers got a little bit unlucky in the regular season. I still believe the Dodgers were the slightly better team, but to have a team like the Dodgers only be slightly better than a team like the Giants says a whole lot about the Giants. It reminds me of the Brian Regan little thing about the stand-up comedian where he talks about, hey guys, that team in the other locker room, they give you a lot of credit. That doesn't make you feel any better when you lose a series. But the fact is the Giants had a great season and put up a fight against a Dodgers team that on paper is one of the best baseball teams in history. One of the best Dodger teams. They, tied the Dodgers record for most wins in a season, despite all the injuries and everything. Like, it's a really good team. And the Giants took the Dodgers to the limit. And it kind of reminds me when I was in high school, my senior year in wrestling, there was these two wrestlers. I think they were in the 160 weight class, a guy named Jason Webster and a guy named Josh Holiday. Jason Webster from Corona Centennial and Josh Holiday from Calvary Chapel. And they were just back and forth. Every tournament, they'd wrestle each other, and they would take turns beating each other, and nobody else ever beat either of them. And they ended up going to the state championship, and Holiday won the state championship over Webster. And then both guys went to the national championships, and Webster won the national championship over Holiday. It was just, they were the only two guys who could beat either of them. And that's kind of how it is with the Dodgers, and we'll see. The rest of this postseason will bear it out whether the Dodgers and Giants really are the only teams that can beat each other. But this felt like the World Series or the NLCS. Like, it's almost as if, Vin Scully said on Twitter that this was the biggest game in the Dodgers-Giants rivalry history. And a lot of people pushed back about the Bobby Thompson game in 1951 or the game in 1962, the tiebreaker. And for me, the reason why Vin might be right about this is because this is the two best teams in baseball. Back then in 1951 and 1962, the Dodgers and Giants were playing each other for the right to lose to the Yankees in the World Series. That nobody thought either of them was the best team in baseball. It was just, okay, who gets to lose to the Yankees in the World Series? And the Giants got to both times. But in this case, this is the two best teams in baseball going down to the wire. And it was awesome. It was awful. It was great and terrible and all those things. And it's why we love baseball. And I'm just glad that we're smiling right now because this game would have sucked to lose.
Yeah, tough one. Would have been a tough one to lose, but good thing we don't talk about that. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about this series and then looking ahead at the NLCS with the Braves, the rematch. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Football is back, and BetOnline is back and better than ever. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. They've got a new updated site, a new updated interface. They've got more odds, more props, more contests, more everything. BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football and everything betting. So head to betonline.ag on your laptop or mobile device, and you can check all that out. You can also sign up and get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit if you use the promo code Locked On. That's promo code Locked On for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit at BetOnline. From baseball, football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms every Monday through Friday. All right, Jeff, we talked a lot about Game 5, talked a lot about the series, Giants, everything else. Is there anything else you think we need to talk about before we move on to the NLCS?
There was so much about this series to talk about, and I imagine this series is going to give us some content for the offseason, because there's going to be stuff. In hindsight, we'll look back, and however this postseason ends, we're going to look back on this series differently. We're going to have plenty to say about this because it was a great series. But yeah, there's plenty to talk about in the future. But I think now it's time to start looking forward to the Braves.
Yeah, the Braves, who maybe not a complete shock, but definitely shocking to be here. They did only have 88 wins. The Dodgers are the wildcard team, and they will be the road team in this series. But the Braves really came together after Ronald Acuna tore his ACL out for the season. You thought they may be done. The Mets were in first place at the time. The Phillies were competing, but the Braves made some nothing groundbreaking, but they made some nice big moves at the deadline. Got some guys in their lineup, boosted their lineup overall, and ended up being the best team in the NL East, even if it was only 88 wins. And then took down a pretty strong Brewers team that had a three-headed monster there in starting pitching. They're going to have three guys probably in the top 10 of Cy Young voting, and we knew their offense wasn't that great. The Braves were able to stifle them, and Jock Peterson ended up coming clutch in couple games for the Braves, but it's a rematch of last year. It feels a little different. The Braves are, like I said, down to Cunha. They still don't have Soroka, but they've gotten here with good defense and a strong infield, hitting wise and defensively, and good enough pitching. But I don't know if they have enough to take down the Dodgers. But let's just start here with what's the one thing that does scare you about this Braves team?
I mean, the Braves are a very good hitting team, and they weren't early in the season. It's crazy. Acuna was going off early this season, and he was the only guy on the team who could hit. And then around the time that he got hurt, everybody else remembered how to hit. Then they traded for Duvall and Soler at the trade deadline. They traded for Jock, and the Braves turned into a very good offensive team. And so, yeah, that's scary. But who else was a good offensive team? The San Francisco Giants, who just scored 10 runs in a 5-game series against the Dodgers. The Dodgers have the best pitching staff in baseball. And so if they're going to go up against a team with a specific strength, I like it being offense, because I believe the Dodgers have the pitching to shut down anybody's offense. So yeah, Freddie Freeman scares me. Jock Peterson scares me in certain situations. Austin Riley is a really good hitter all of a sudden. They have a lot of guys. I don't know if Jorge Soler is going to be playing. He tested positive for COVID, came off the NLDS roster. I don't know if it's going to be a full 10-day thing. If it is, then chances are he's not going to be on the NLCS roster, which could give the Dodgers a break. But, they have plenty of guys who can hit, but also, if they had played a team with any offense at all in their NLDS, they wouldn't have won, because the Braves did not score many runs against the Brewers pitching. And I think the Dodgers pitching is, starting pitching is roughly equal to the Brewers starting pitching, and the Dodgers have a better bullpen. So I feel like the Braves offense scares me a little bit, but not so much. It doesn't scare me more than the fact, doesn't scare me so much that I forget that the Dodgers finished 18 games ahead of the Braves for a reason.
Yeah, and even with that offense, I mean, they played pretty recent. They played at the beginning of end of August, early September, 3-game series. The Dodgers ended up sweeping one of those games being a comeback win. I think the Braves scored like 8 total runs in that 3-game series. So the Dodgers were able to stifle their offense enough. They didn't put up too many runs, but it's also a little bit different team. The Dodgers, got a lot stronger on offense when it came to September. If not for Logan Webb and kind of the matrix that was Alex Wood and those pitchers that day and the wind and everything else, the Dodgers, outscored the Giants pretty much. They put up 16 runs in the other 2 games that they ended up winning. So it comes down to, the Dodgers. It's one of those things where, yeah, you're facing a team that won 88 games. You're facing a team that the most recent time you played them, you swept them. You're facing a team that you've beaten the postseason 3 of the last 8 years. But all that doesn't matter, and we've seen that in the postseason before. And it's a matter of, I don't think this Dodger team will do it, but looking ahead, you don't want to look ahead too early. You don't want to say, oh, basically put yourself in the World Series already. You want to take this game by game and go out there and dominate. And with the Dodgers starting pitching and with their hitting and with their bullpen, they're better in almost pretty much all 3 categories. The offense would be the only category where they're kind of close. And the Dodgers just have to go out and actually do it and actually play well. And it shouldn't take more than 6 games if that's the case.
Yeah, and Cody Bellinger was asked after Game 5 of the NLDS, do you feel like you just faced the toughest team you're going to face this postseason? And even Cody Bellinger said the right thing, said, I don't see it that way. We got to take every series. So if even Cody Bellinger in his drunken stupor could give the right answer to that, I think the message is getting across. I don't think we need to worry about the Dodgers looking past the Braves. I think the Dodgers are looking forward to playing the Braves. It took them 7 games last year. I think they want to get it done in 6 or 5 or 4 this year and just kind of go and dominate. And then it's going to be a rematch of a World Series that they lost. If the Dodgers can get past the Braves, they're going to have a rematch of one of the 2 teams that cheated while beating the Dodgers in the World Series. And so either way, that's going to be fun. It's either going to be the team that has Kike and Verdugo and that used to have Mookie, or it's going to be the team that legit full on cheated to win a World Series. So either one of those has good storylines. So it's going to be hard for us not to look past the Braves, but I have no doubt that the Dodgers are going to be totally focused on the Braves and just with a plan to come out and dominate that series.
Yeah, it's Game 1's going to be the most important game of this series. Game 1's usually more important, but this one specifically, the Dodgers are coming off a huge Game 5 victory. They're coming off, beating the Giants. They're going to be, celebrating tonight. They'll have one day to travel, start the series in Atlanta on Saturday. And, losing Game 1 wouldn't be the end of the world, but winning Game 1 would be, getting themselves in the right mindset, having Walker Buehler more than likely in Game 2, assuming Scherzer goes Game 1, and then Julio in Game 3. You're just, setting yourself up for success, and Game 1's going to be the important one. And, I'm really looking forward to seeing Trey Turner, Justin Turner maybe figure some things out, or just maybe it's just Logan Webb. If they don't face Logan Webb, maybe that'll be enough to fix the top of the order in the offense, because, as you said, Lux hit well this series. Who knows if they're going to keep him in there? AJ Pollock, there's going to be some things there. Max Fried will probably go Game 1, so it'll be a lefty on the mound. So I'd imagine we see Pollock. But and Max Fried's done very well against Dodgers. He could be that Logan Webb type in this series where he could take 2 games from the Dodgers. He did it last year in 1 game, didn't quite do it in the second game. But it's a matter of the Dodgers coming out and doing it, and like I said, not getting ahead of themselves, which I don't think would be an issue, but just not having a letdown game there in Game 1. They got to come back ready to go and fire on all cylinders.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Max Fried's a little bit scary, but the Dodgers have faced him plenty. Like you said, they beat him in a big game last year. I like the chances of the Turner brothers breaking out a little bit against Fried, providing some of that spark. And all in all, yeah, it's Braves are a really good team that is not as good as the Dodgers. So if the Dodgers play their game, they should win that series.
Yeah. So we got through a lot today. Like you said, there's a lot to still probably talk about and digest. And maybe after this World Series run, we'll get into more of this NLDS and just everything that happened and relive it. But is there anything else before we head out for this weekend, Jeff, that you want to talk about?
No, just shout out to our buddy Ben Kaspick of Locked On Giants. It's a rough night for them, and I think there is a lot of respect in this rivalry. The Dodgers and Giants, don't like each other. Dodgers fans and Giants fans don't like each other, but there is a mutual respect there. And the fact is the Giants had a great team this year. Ben does a great job over at Locked On Giants, and beating the Giants, it feels really good. But there's still that mutual respect. And it's different than if it was if it had been the Padres, I'd be like, hey, Javi, cry more, but the Giants, there's a respect there. And so I genuinely feel bad for Giants fans who are disappointed right now. Not so bad that I wish anything had gone differently. And by the time I wake up in the morning, I won't care anymore. But right at this moment, as we're recording this, shout out to Ben. I hope you're doing okay.
Yeah. The Giants fans, I do know that while they can be obnoxious in the moment, there is that respect once the games end.
You can say Sean's name.
Yeah. My buddy Bay Sean, but we talked after the game, and it was all respect. And I think their fans even knew a little bit that this was a season that kind of came out of nowhere. Maybe one of those times, like it kind of reminds you of the Dodgers in 2008, 2009, where they weren't quite ready. Obviously, they weren't as good as this Giants team that was this year, so it's a little bit different. But weren't quite ready, and then they obviously we don't have on the Dodgers Frank McCourt, but I think this team will continue on and give the Dodgers a run for their money here in the NL West for the next few years, especially if their core continues to develop, or their younger core continues to develop. Logan Webb and Lamont Wade and all those guys can repeat their success they had this year. But man, it does feel good to beat the Giants, and it does feel good to be heading to the NLCS and just be able to walk around with a smile on your face.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for making us your first listen every day. Locked On Dodgers, wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube. It's free everywhere. We will be back on Monday to talk about the first two games of the NLCS, hopefully talking about a 2-0 series lead for the Dodgers with the chance to close it out at home at Dodger Stadium. Make sure to make your second listen of the day Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. He brings you his unique perspective on the majors, past and present. It's also free and available on all platforms. That'll do it for us. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. We are on, or Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm on Twitter at Ben Samperio. You can get a hold of us on any of those accounts. You can also get a hold of us via phone 323-863-LOCK for text or voicemail, or you can send us an email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car, or if you're at home. Tell your smart device, play podcast Locked On Dodgers, and remember, you don't have to agree, you just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you on Monday.